Oren is the world's first mining marketplace to help drive digitalisation, innovation and sustainability within the industry. Oren helps you to find and evaluate solutions that are right for your mining company's challenges and will help to integrate them into your workflows. We will help you find solutions for operations, maintenance and asset management, planning and inventory, sustainability, safety and more. Oren. Join the Oren marketplace today.
Hi everyone, my name's Michelle Ash. I'm the CEO of GEOVIA and I'm here speaking with you today about shaping the sustainable future of mining. I've been in the mining industry now for nearly 30 years and it's an industry that I have been fantastically proud of because we have made so many strides in that time, from changes in the way that we approach health and safety. I think our safety record has changed dramatically. The way we think about the environment and the impacts that we have on our communities, and the wealth that we create and distribute to the nations and the communities in which we work. So our ability to be sustainable and to create a sustainable industry has changed dramatically. I think though one of the greatest challenges that we face at the moment is that the rate at which the perception from others outside the industry, from shareholders, from young people, from communities, is changing at a very, very rapid rate. So part of our challenge is how do we increase our rate of change? And so a lot of what I want to talk to you about today is really around increasing that pace and increasing the rate at which we change our industry. As I said, I think we have changed quite dramatically over the last few years. I know even the way we refer to ourselves, we've gone from being the mining industry more and more now to being the sustainable mining industry. And I see some great strides from a number of companies looking at how we become more carbon neutral, how we introduce renewables, how we look at automation, how we work much more remotely, and especially this year during COVID, we've changed that quite dramatically. And I think the fantastic flip side to that is that our industry is more and more in demand. You know, there still are many people looking to urbanize, looking to industrialize, and so certainly mining and materials are in great demand. And, you know, I think as we morph ourselves into the sustainable mining industry, more and more we will start thinking about being the sustainable materials industry. And I think that change for us, really looking at recycling, looking at urban mining, and so not just having freshly mined materials as part of our offering, but actually as we start as an industry to really embrace the circular economy. And I see that again similarly happening more and more mining companies starting to engage in recycling, think about circularity, especially in the batteries part of our industry, but I think also more and more even in steel, in copper and other parts of the industry. And I think part of that change will be us really embracing and understanding some of the major systemic problems that we have to solve yet. And those four, and I know we've spoken about them a number of times before, but the four that I think if we could really crack them, it would fundamentally transform our industry is global ore body intelligence. So the ability to understand our ore bodies down to the last gram, understand their genesis and how they were evolved, be able to pinpoint potential ore bodies significantly faster, 10 times as fast at the rate that we find ore bodies at the moment. And then when we do find them, to really embrace new ways of sensing, understanding, establishing, estimating, so that our knowledge of those ore bodies is very, very finite. We can understand, even down to, as I said, the last gram. Because if we could do that, we could fundamentally change the way we plan, we operate, we build our mines, and fundamentally change the cost structure of them. The second one is really to automate and to electrify our mines. And in this case, you know, I know we've done a lot of work on automation in terms of trucks and dozers and graders and other equipment, really taking people out of harm's way and putting them into more office environments where their health and safety outcomes are significantly better, and having them monitor or optimize the equipment. But I think, you know, automation is even around how do we augment human decision making? How do we augment potentially people doing activities in the workplace, whether that be maintenance activities, whether that be construction activities, whether that be you know, geological, mine planning, etc. So I think there's still much more that we can do to fundamentally automate and augment the capabilities of all of the people in the industry. The third is really around precision extraction. How do we more precisely remove those atoms that we're really interested in, the metals that we're interested in, and preferably leave large chunks of the rest of the material behind, rather than removing it as we do at the moment. Because again, you know, the more precisely we can extract, the more economic our industry will be, the smaller the impacts on the environment will be. You know, if we could become a zero waste industry. So that also does come to how we extract other minerals, how we reuse and repurpose some of the material that we move. And then the last one is really around social value creation. How do we fundamentally rethink the way that we create value, the way we distribute value? Because again, if we want to become the sustainable mining industry, sustainability is really around people, profit and planet. And I know one of the criticisms often placed at the mining industry is around the sustainability of the wealth that we create. So how do we build capability within the communities, within the governments? How do we help speed up that rate of development and support those communities and governments, especially in those most disadvantaged areas, you know, where we work? But I think if we can solve a number of those problems, and these are large systemic problems, not only in terms of the tactical way and the proof of concepts that we're currently working on, but how do we really look towards driving that transformation of our industry? And I think if we can do that, then we will lay the foundation to be the industry that leads the charge in a number of these you know, fundamental issues around recycling, around renewable energies, around wealth creation and distribution, especially in those underprivileged communities. So what then, you know, what is the way that as an industry we're going to get there? And, you know, I think part of it is really understanding, well, what is the competitive advantage that mining companies have? And, you know, again, I was reflecting on the years that I've been in the mining industry, and I think, you know, one of the things that I think mining industries are fantastically good at, and what we should be even better and better at, is identifying problems and solving them. And I think, you know, the real competitive advantage that ultimately mining companies will have is this ability to identify a problem, work with providers, you know, technology providers and others, to come with solutions to solve that problem. And then not only have that problem solved in one of our mine sites, but actually across all of our mine sites. And so I think this ability to solve problems, create value, and rapidly scale that across our sites, work with our people to adopt those solutions. And so often what I talk about is, how do we drive the time to value to be as short as possible? How do we speed up that time to value, which is the time from identification of the problem to the solution being implemented and the value flowing? So people actually doing things differently in the workplace. And it's that time that we want to shorten rapidly as an industry. And that's really around working fundamentally with our people, making sure that the technology solutions that we buy are desirable, and working with our teams to really do that sort of humanistic design. How are people going to use these tools? How do we scale them rapidly? How do we find problems and solutions that can not only be specific to one of our mine sites, but in fact could be used across multiple mine sites? And so I think key to that, other than really having a great working relationship with our people, being able to engage them in these new technologies, in solving these problems, rapidly get them to adopt new behaviours, new ways of doing things, but also it's around collaboration. Because again, by definition, we don't want to be inventing things. We really want to be taking things that are already being developed, and adapting and adopting them and integrating them into our own industry. So whether that collaboration is around working with other mining companies, and I think that, again, there's some great examples, not only within our own industry, and we're starting to see a lot more collaboration, whether that be organisation that I'm the chair of, so GMG, or whether that is as part of the ICMM, where I know that there's a number of fantastic collaborations going on with battery electric vehicles, as well as tailings dams, etc. Or whether that be in some of the smaller consortiums. So I know that there's currently an electric mine consortium with 5 mining companies based out of Perth at the moment. So I think we're seeing more and more of these consortiums, groups of mining companies or groups of the mining industry are coming together to start solving some of these significant problems. So I think that's a great step forward. Again, how do we speed up those consortiums? How do we speed up the implementation of those changes? I think the second part is really working collaboratively with technology providers, all the way from the very small. And again, I think there's some great examples of working with accelerators. And I know Unearthed is very, very active here in Australia, and there's a number also overseas, whether that's working with the small to medium size companies, or the larger companies such as Dassault and others. But really working across those technology providers, and even encouraging the technology providers in a lot of instances to work together. Because, again, these problems that we're trying to solve, the reason why collaboration is so important, and this cross-industry, cross-technology groups, cross-mining companies is so important, is that these are complex problems. These are multidisciplinary problems that we're trying to solve. And again, the mining industry itself is relatively small. And so the ability for us to be able to leverage solutions from other industries, or leverage our solutions into other industries, brings the cost down for everybody, brings the speed of development up for everybody. And so the third part of that really is working with other industries. And I think, again, there's some fantastic examples of, the aerospace industry starting to, have some solutions that we can use in mining, such as some robotics that have been designed to ultimately do things on the moon, but working, a couple of thousand meters underground, being an important part of that currently. Whether that be, looking at what the car industry has done, and some of the improvements that they have made, especially in the way that they rapidly design and prototype and share those designs and prototypes across the industry for certain components that they wish to collaborate on. But similarly, there's also things that we can take from our industry into those industries, such as the interest that they have in our remote operating centres, in our automation designs, and especially some of the test beds that we've set up, and testing processes that we've set up. Some of the things that we're doing, and again in Western Australia, which I think is fantastic, around sodium batteries and fixed batteries, You know, so again, we can use some of the things that they've learned from mobile batteries and share some of the things that we're learning in terms of fixed batteries. So I think there's a lot we can do from a collaboration perspective that will rapidly help increase our capability. And then really thinking about this issue around scale. How do we scale these solutions, not just from one mining company or even from one industry in mining, but scale them across multiple industries, multiple companies? Because again, from a company's perspective, what we want is those solutions solved. What we want as an industry is to solve those solutions. And the longevity of those solutions becomes important. And important to that longevity, obviously, is the scale that we can get, and therefore the profitability and productivity of those solutions. So part of this, though, is how we actually go about this transformation. And so I know for a number of us, we've been on a journey to digitise our industry now for some of us almost a decade, for most of us, you know, around about 4 or 5 years. For some, it's a very, very early part of the journey. And digitisation is the first part of that transformation. And digitisation really, especially as we try to understand our data, not just in 2 dimensions, but actually add in that 3rd dimension. And how do we understand and contextualise it in terms of the 3 dimensions, how we're doing things, how we're conducting ourselves. And, you know, a lot of our problems are actually 3-dimensional. The second part of that transformation, though, is once we've digitised, then how do we actually break down those silos? How do we integrate that information? And how do we understand what we're really from end to end? How to integrate all of those data sets, all of those systems that we might have. How do we get those insights? Because often the insights are not found just within one silo, but it's actually across multiple silos. So, you know, digitising geology, even using AI, ML, having the best geological models, yes, we'll optimise maybe the way we can explore, maybe we'll optimise the way we can define our geology, maybe we'll even halve the time or quarter the time that it takes us to do those sorts of things. But the real power comes when we can link our geology to our mine planning, to our processing, to the contracts that we have for our customers, and optimise across all 4 components of our operations. And so I think in order to do that, really having a data model and a clear way of expressing and thinking about that data, so that we can integrate all of the different data sources, yet still have a consistency of understanding, a consistency of data, not only from one end of our operations to the other, but through time scales as well. So at the beginning, the middle and the end of our operations. Having the ability to be able to integrate different types of software, different types of data into a single data platform also becomes fundamental to that capability, and certainly was fundamental to changing, you know, the way the car industry, for example, goes about crash testing. You know, no longer do they build a lot of cars and slam them against walls. Now they do all of that crash testing. All of that understanding comes from simulations in the virtual world, because they built virtual twins of their operations, of their cars, of the environment that they might be working in. The third part, though, to this transformation is really executive sponsorship. You know, one of the things we found that really drives rapidly the change within a mining company and the change within the industry is when the executives are behind some of these transformations. They understand the need, the value case, and the method of that transformation, because a lot of these transformations are really around cultural change. I mean, the technologies that are enablers, But really at the end of the day, and you know, I say this as a technology company, the technology is about 30% of the problem. The other 70% is really not only the business case and how value will be derived from solving this problem and therefore implementing this technology to enable that solution, but most of it is really around how people then change the way that they do things. And it's increasing that speed, and therefore the executive sponsorship and the cultural change becomes very, very important to that. And then the fourth component is really around cybersecurity. And, you know, I know this has been one of those issues that has potentially slowed our rate of transformation and slowed our rate of change, because people are fearful of, you know, what if we have cyber attacks? What if we open ourselves to these security problems or events? And, you know, what I have been saying sort of tongue in cheek for some time is that, you know, our data was so secure before that even we couldn't find it because it was hidden in somebody's office or, you know, on somebody's computer. And that is true. The more that we use these technologies, the more we digitize, the more open we are to cybersecurity threats. However, these are manageable, and we can manage and we need to understand those risks, just like every other risk that we understand within our business: safety, health, major hazards, etc. We need to understand those risks, which means that audit committees need to understand cybersecurity. They need to have, you know, good advisors and good structure around how to deal with cybersecurity issues. Executives need to understand cybersecurity. And there's some fantastic examples. And I know a number of companies in the mining industry have now joined the ISAC, so the Mining and Metals ISAC. If you haven't, then I would definitely reach out to Rob Labe, who is IT for Tech. He just also happens to be the chair of the ISAC. And the ISAC is designed for the industry to be able to, in a secure way, share its securities, share how it's responded, and learn from each other. And in fact, was built on the back of the financial industry. And the last issue and reason, and I guess driver of this transformation, is for our workforce. You know, and we all talk about wanting to attract young people to our industry. We all know that we absolutely need to, because we have a large percentage in most of our cases of our industry and our employees retiring over the next sort of 10 years. And so the need to bring young people into our industry is heightened across all of us. And so to be attractive to young people, we really do need to have, you know, advanced ways of solving problems. We need to have interesting problems to solve, and we need to have the digital tools and the technology enablers to get the best out of our younger workforce. So adoption and rapid adoption really is what we're trying to achieve and what will drive sustainability within our industry. And that starts with identifying what are the problems that we wish to solve. And again, when I talk about sustainability, it's really about, you know, people. So how do we drive the best out of our people? How do we augment their capability? How do we enable them to solve problems faster? How do we also then identify those problems that we really need to think about and resolve in terms of the planet, so its impact on health, on environmental outcomes, and then how do we really look at those problems that will help drive efficiencies and, you know, therefore impact not only the profit of our businesses, but the long-term ability for us to create wealth. Secondly, we need to have a compelling business case, which means that, you know, we need to have the value well understood of solving those problems. We need to identify the technologies that are feasible and able to solve those problems. But then most importantly, we need to make sure that those solutions are desirable, that our people actually want to take them on board and use them. So if we wish to increase our rate of change, if we focus on those key systemic problems, if we work much, collaboratively and continue an increased rate of collaboration, if we focus on the transformation and how we're going to not only do a number of smaller sort of changes, but how we ultimately transform our industry, and then if we adopt rapidly through our people and engaging our people, then we will become the industry that not just meets, but exceeds the expectations of our shareholders and our stakeholders, all of our stakeholders. So thank you. And if you have, as it says, any additional questions, then please feel free to reach out to somebody from Dassault Systems, to myself.